think we could all agree that as a Shopify store owner, as you begin to scale or continue to scale your business, there become a lot more complicated issues or challenges related to the website. You don't necessarily have time to solve it yourself. You need a professional complete the task for you, but you don't want to necessarily be scammed, and you want to make sure that the person that works on your website actually knows what they're doing and that they don't take you backwards. The thing is that, every single Shopify owner that we run across, even our own clients and myself, we've all had that experience where either we've had someone work on the website that wasn't necessarily being truthful about their expertise, or they didn't know exactly what they were doing and they actually made things worse instead of better. In this video, I'm going to give you everything that you need to know when you're hiring a Shopify store developer to make sure that they fit your project perfectly, as well as can not only meet your immediate needs, but also can meet those future needs as well. It's a very difficult thing to do, I would say, especially if you don't have expertise or any sort of experience in IT. One thing I will say is that what is working now may not work in the future. And so as I go through the video, you're probably going to start to realize, okay, this is where I'm at, this is kind of where I'm going, and this is kind of the level of developer or the kind of developer or agency that I need to help me. So ultimately, the purpose of this video is basically save you a bunch of time. As you walk through this video, you're going to start to understand, okay, this is how I need to kind of pick the right developer, pick the right person or agency to work with. Step one is to understand what you need today. And that actually could just be a business strategy thing. It could be a vision. It could be also like a very specific technical challenge, right? But before you walk into that meeting and discuss something with a developer, you need to understand, what exactly am I looking for? I walk into a lot of calls and meetings where they're like, I'm not really sure. And so that's actually a very scary place to be, because ultimately, if you're talking to the wrong person, you might not be getting the best advice, because at the end of the day, a lot of the people that you're talking to are just developers. They are going to just say, this is what I did on my last store, so this is what I think you should do. Maybe not exactly thinking too strategically about that, which we'll get to that down the road. But ultimately, I think it's just being clear. And when I walk into this meeting, this is what I need right now. That's a very important thing to understand before you do that, because like I said, if you don't, you kind of open yourself up to potentially receiving bad coaching or bad advice from a person that doesn't really understand your business, doesn't understand your customer, and doesn't understand the journey and what it's taken to actually get to this point. So ultimately, you need to know what that is. But also, I think we'll talk about this a little bit later. It's like, what do I need right now? And then what am I going to need 3, 6, 12 months from now, if you can think that far out, right? That being said, whatever you're solving for today, that helps us understand, well, who needs to work on it? If you're making a small layout change, you need to change the color of a button. I need the spacing to be slightly bigger on this specific page. I need to change the color of the button, things of that nature. Any sort of a junior developer, any sort of offshore developer can probably help you with that, right? It's a very small task. It's very clear what needs to be done. Hey, I just need these few changes done on my website. Now, I will caution you, don't oversimplify things, but if you're literally just hey, I just need some visual edits and I know exactly what I need, almost any developer would be able to help you with that, right? Because even then they could use ChatGPT and probably figure it out. But if you're doing any sort of custom work, you have some back-end issue or product maintenance problem, or something where I'm not really sure, I just know I have this X problem, but I don't know exactly what the technical nuances are, and I don't fully understand what is going on because someone else built this thing, then you're probably gonna need someone that's a bit more senior, more advanced, has been here before, knows Shopify, knows what's going on, and ultimately is gonna help you guide you to the right place, right? So I would say in point number one, if you're not really sure what you need, talk to a bunch of senior developers. They're gonna be able to actually guide you in the right direction. Let's say even if you don't hire them. Now, I will say, try not to waste a bunch of people's time, especially if you're hey, I'm gonna talk to these senior devs, get an idea, and then go hire a junior dev to do it. That actually also is a recipe for disaster, because ultimately the reason the senior dev knows these things is because they've probably done them before. If you try to use that strategy I just talked about, you're gonna find yourself in a bit of trouble, because the junior dev has no clue, right, how to do this thing. Whereas the senior dev actually knows because they can speak to it. But ultimately, just try to pair that up, right? If I have some again, per your understanding, what you would consider more basic, simple changes, I think you could go on a Fiverr, an Upwork, something like that, and hire, someone that's relatively reasonably priced, offshore, things of that nature. If it's a bit more complicated and there's a lot more uncertainty in the mix, then I would definitely recommend looking at senior developers, someone that has experience, years, tons of projects under their belt, things of that nature, right? So the other thing to mention in this is that why pick an onshore versus offshore versus agency? How do I decide? Is it a freelancer, or what do I do here, right? Offshore freelancers and developers are definitely cheaper, but it can be riskier if the scope isn't exactly defined and the timeline is really tight, right? It's going to require a bit more back and forth with them. It's going to require just realize going into that relationship that you're going to have to be setting very clear expectations and a very clear vision for what needs to be done, and they can do it, right? If you do that very well and you work with them this way, it can definitely be done this way. Now, if you're not very technical and like you haven't really delved into the website side, then just keep in mind that like when you communicate things, you might think it's clear, but the developer themselves may not. So also keep that in mind that, okay, if I've worked with developers before, I've been able to like work with an offshore or, some developer where there's maybe a bit of a language barrier or something like this. If you've done that in the past, that's great, but just realize that it has to be super clear from a development perspective. It can't just be clear from like a business perspective. Example would be like, I don't like the look and feel of my website. It's like, okay, that is a lot of nuance / uncertainty there. It is going to be very unclear to a normal developer off the streets, just, someone that's been doing it maybe for a year, maybe two, or just starting out. They're going to have like almost no clue how to guide or direct or figure out what actually needs to be done on the website. Whereas someone like more onshore, right, is going to be able to understand things a bit better. They're going to be able to translate those needs and also potentially give you a lot more direction. Hey, I understand you don't like the homepage. Well, what do you like, right? Do you like this website or that website? What don't you like about the homepage? That's when I think, you either bring a senior dev or an agency because it's more strategic in nature. It's less, hey, I need you to do A, B, C. It's something that like, hey, I need help deciding. I need help. I need some guidance, right? So that's kind of the difference between like offshore, onshore, and it's related to that previous point, right? Whereas, don't get me wrong, there's some senior developers too offshore as well. So I don't want to just say like, oh, offshore are all like junior or regular developers. That's not necessarily the case, but just keep in mind there is going to be some sort of a disconnect when it comes between like offshore and onshore developers. The other thing I mentioned previously is basically want to think beyond what you currently need. Right? So you might be saying, all right, today I think I need some minor theme tweaks to kind of just get me along, right? Like my store has just visually doesn't look right. Let's just make a bunch of tweaks and edits to the existing store. Cool, that's like one need. But if you say, hey, like 2 or 3 months down the road, I might need a full-fledged redesign, just keep in mind, hey, the person I'm using now may not be a great fit for that project. Is it worth my time getting this developer up to speed to understand my business, my needs, and how I work? Or should I just go ahead and hire the agency or the senior developer at the beginning, let them do the minor changes, understanding that I might overpay a little bit for maybe some of these smaller tasks, but ultimately when I do the bigger one, the bigger project, they're going to be a lot more ingrained in my systems. They're going to know me. They're going to know my business. They'll be able to actually like be a lot more effective when it comes to that future need that I have. Yes, you need to understand what you need today, but ultimately you need to make sure that what you need in the future isn't like somewhat immediate, and therefore whatever you're doing today and whoever you hire today, you don't want that to negatively impact the vision that you have for the future, right? So just keep that in mind. It's like, hey, if I need something really quick, cool, I can just throw it to a developer, pretty much anybody on these freelancing platforms. They'll just handle it. Cool, awesome. I'd recommend that for either smaller stores, lower revenue, just a quick immediate need. Hey, I'm gonna just like outsource this really quick, right? But again, just keep in mind that like that whatever that person, we've made this mistake even as an agency ourselves. It's like whatever that person did well before doesn't necessarily translate into some other task as easily as we all think, right? Oh, they did a good job before. Why can't they just do this job? And it's like, well, this task, this project is a lot more advanced and a lot more complicated, and therefore the results I'm going to be getting from said person is not going to be the exact same. Again, I mentioned this before. Somebody also like, hey, this is what I need immediately now. And it's like, okay, how quickly do I need this? How major of an issue is this? That should kind of go into your thinking. But like I said, when it comes to either a junior or regular developer and a lot of the offshore developers, I think fall into this category, there is a big disconnect in time, communication. There's a huge gap. They might be working different hours than you as well. So if I have something that's like really quick, I just need to get it done immediately, I would just pay more and get someone that is in your time zone. You could give them a phone call and just take care of business, right? It's going to be more expensive, but ultimately if it's like a very big, important thing, hey, people can't check out on my website. Well, okay, that's something I personally as a business owner would pay a lot for. I think a lot of Shopify store owners would do the same, right? But if something a little bit longer, then, I think we can have those communication gaps. It's still a big deal. We'll work through it, right? It takes us 2-5 weeks or whatever it is, right? And you always want to bake in buffer time. If you think something's going to take 1 to 2 days, you think a developer will take them 1 to 2 days, probably think that's going to be 4, 5, 6 days, something like this instead, right? Because there's always a revision, a tweak. Oh, that's great. I'm glad you did that, but can you do this as well, right? A lot of us do that, including myself. myself. Budget is another consideration, right? Like, especially in the beginning, we even tell like younger companies or startups are like, hey, we may not be the best fit. We can do all of this. It's no big deal for us. But ultimately, maybe that's a little bit outside your budget at the moment, right? You don't have a website budget. You don't have funds allocated to build on the website. You're really just spending a lot on marketing, exposure, things of that nature. It's like, okay, then we need to keep website costs lower. Therefore, you might want to use someone that's is a lower budget, even though they have less expertise. It might be a lot more work for you, but ultimately, you might just need to say, hey, I'm accepting the fact that this is going to cost me less money. It might cost me more time. So that's the other thing too, is like, if you have a lot of time and maybe this is a startup business and you're willing to put in like sweat equity and basically work over hours, and maybe you have a regular job and you're putting some extra time in, maybe you're working 80 hours total and you're spending 40 hours on the startup. It just kind of comes down to like how much your time is worth, right? It's like, hey, if I hire a more junior person, I need to provide a lot more direction. I need to provide a lot more clarity and basically tell them exactly what to do, then that's totally fine, right? It's just going to take more of your time. But when it comes to more of the senior side, just realize it is going to cost you more, but maybe you're saving some more of your time. So there is a bit of balance, right? There is a bit of balance. It's definitely about ROI there. And I think a lot of projects are, it's like when we have an idea in our head, it's like, okay, this is the project I want to do. When I want to have an idea of budget, but that's actually quite difficult to do. I would say if you're not a developer yourself, it's like, I think this is easy, but I'm not really sure. You tell me, right? And so there has to be a bit of vetting there. I'd probably talk to 2 or 3 people just to get an idea. So it's definitely something how you can gauge budget if you're not really sure, is to just talk to a bunch of developers. Of course, there are going to be outliers, right? Maybe the person charging $5,000 is really freaking good and they can just crush it and there's going to be no problems. The person probably charging you $1 is maybe a little bit lower quality, a little bit more junior. There's that old saying, you get what you paid for. And I think we can't get away from that. I don't think. Ultimately, that is the truth, right? Because the person charging $5, been doing this a while, they understand they add a lot of value. They have a lot more experience typically. They know that they just don't have enough time to be charging $1,000, whereas maybe the person charging $1,000 has enough time. They'll spend more hours. It's more of a learning, right? So again, I think just realizing that as well is like budget and price and experience all kind of blend together to formulate some sort of budget. And ultimately that all leads into like, how much effort it's going to require on your end? Are they going to be able to think strategically? Are they just going to take orders, right? This sort of thing. Budget is a thing. It's a reality. A lot of the time I would say like it kind of depends on where you're at as a business. It's like, hey, when I make this investment in a website, then I'm going to make a lot more money. And so as you get bigger, your website budget tends to expand, right? And get bigger. So ultimately, that is what we see as a trend. That's just a thing that we've observed, but it's not always like a one size fits all. Some startups are like, hey, I just want this done correctly. I'm going to hire the senior person, just get it done for me, and it's okay, it's a little bit more. The other thing I would say is that when you're on these phone calls with these developers is you want to have some set of questions, right? A lot of time I like to ask and we do hiring of developers all the time, right? As an agency, I might ask them, I might just log into a Shopify website and say, hey, how do I change that on the back end? Where do I go as a business owner? What do I do? And you would be surprised, people that say they're a Shopify expert, they have no clue how to answer that. Like, Shopify has a back end and I know it's somewhere on there. And it's like, okay, that's not really giving me a huge level of comfort that you know Shopify very well. So I like to ask very specific questions. And even if I would even say outside of your project, right? Like just asking some very basic things, like as a business owner, you would know the back end of Shopify, you would know to change a price, you just go to the product and click in there and you type it in, right? So I think asking some more basic questions, even on the junior side as well, just making sure they have some sort of core understanding of Shopify platform, because ultimately that is a factor, right? You don't want someone that really has no Shopify experience at all. You probably want someone that at least has like a couple projects under their belt and they have some idea what's going on the back end. If they fumble around and you ask them specific Shopify questions, or you say, hey, give me some Shopify projects that you've done, and it's not like 100% clear, then like I think that's basically like a no-go. That's a bit of a red flag, which we'll get to some of those later. The other thing I would work through with the developer is like, what's your working style? What's your cadence? How do you like to communicate, right? It's like you have a certain style. Some people like phone calls. Some people like just chatting. Some people like emails. So it's important to understand how the developer operates to see if that kind of meshes with how you prefer. Even if someone's like a wizard or like they're really talented, but like they're like, I don't want to do phone calls ever. And it's like, well, sometimes it's required, and sometimes I want to talk to somebody. But if you kind of get this idea that like, I don't want to do phone calls, I've had some of those calls as well, where the person's like, I don't really do them. It's like, okay, that might be bad, because we can do a line sometimes and get on a call, right? Just realize that like, this is almost an extension of your company. Yes, you're hiring like an external person to do this potentially, or an agency doing this for you. But ultimately, you want to kind of feel like it's easy to work with them, right? I can get stuff done with them because I know how their style is, it kind of matches with my style, or I can work that way. But I would say if it's too far off, you like phone calls and they don't, it's like, okay, that's kind of like a deal breaker for you, right? So just kind of get some ideas of how I like to work. Don't tell them how you like to work, just ask how they would like to work and how they typically execute projects. See if you're comfortable with it. And then if you want to tell them, hey, I like phone calls, can we do some of those? Just be careful, because a lot of people say, yeah, no problem at all. But if they didn't really say that at the beginning and they said they hate phone calls, and you ask them if they do phone calls, they say yes, it's like, well, okay, wait, were they telling me the truth? Are they just trying to land the job? What's going on here, right? So that's something to definitely keep in mind as you're going through this whole process. Is like, unfortunately, not everybody's going to be truthful with us, and unfortunately, they're going to not be honest in order to land the job, which, again, I don't advise this, but I think some people are operating the world this way. So it's something to be careful of when you're talking to a developer. Okay, gauge your level of trust, gauge your level of like, is everything making sense in this conversation, right? So like, okay, they said that before, but now they're saying something completely opposite. Wait a second. And I would probably call them on it if you notice this. Hey, you said this earlier, but now you're saying why instead. You said earlier you had no clients, and you say you have 2 or 3. Well, which one is it? I'm confused. And see what happens, right? So I think also kind of like looking for patterns and things of that nature, experience, budget, onshore versus offshore, all these things are very important, but ultimately, can I trust this person to work on my business that is so close and near and dear to my heart, right? Like, when we hire people, I'm like, we have to trust them. We have to get a vibe from them to make sure that like we're bringing on someone we can trust. That's very important. And the other thing too is kind of like say, and you can't do this with everybody, right? Because if they're just a developer and they don't really have business or startup experience, like, you'd be like, hey, what would you do if you're in my shoes? It's a bit of an add-on question. I think for more senior developers, people that have a lot more experience, you can ask those sorts of questions just to get an idea of how they see the world and how they see your business. Kind of a fun question to ask. That's not always valuable, especially if you're working with someone that's more junior and doesn't have as much experience. Like, they're not gonna be able to answer that question, but they might be able to still help you on your website for, a relatively like cheap price. The other thing I wanted to talk about really quick, this is just a bonus. Thank you for watching up into this point. I feel like I've been kind of rambling, but maybe that's just how I am. There's some red flags, right? One red flag that we've seen with people is if you keep asking a bunch of questions and the person just keeps saying yes and basically like nothing else. Yeah, I can totally do that. No problem. Okay. What about this? Yeah, I can do that. I've done that before. No big deal. I think we have a problem, right? Because natural flow of conversation is basically like, it might be a yes, but a lot of time I'm saying yes, and then I'm kind of I'm trying to think through what they're saying and asking some clarifying questions. Did I hear that correctly? Right? Kind of playing it back to you. Again, this is not really an issue if you have like a lot of just like list of technical things that are very specific. I need to change this color. I need to change this verbiage. I need to change this copy. That's totally fine if you have someone that says, yes, I can do that, right? But ultimately, a lot of the time as humans in conversations, we're trying to understand the other person. And if I just say yes to everything, I don't have any questions, any curiosity at all, either I have no interest in this conversation or I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just hoping to get the job. Again, back to what I was saying before. The other thing, this is another red flag, is like they have no Shopify experience at all. You can use a developer that has no Shopify experience, but I can't even count on both my hands how many people have come to us or how many companies have come to us and said, yeah, they're a great developer, but like they don't do Shopify. And it's like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Because they're kind of making decisions, not really understanding the platform. They're doing weird stuff that doesn't make any sense. It's like, hey, why did you do it that way when you could have just stored it on the product? So we've run across these scenarios, and like it definitely, you can see it in the store, you can see it in the design and kind of how they've set up things. You want to realize that like when someone has no Shopify experience, it actually could impact you, it could impact the employees at your company, because now you created a process that doesn't make any sense and doesn't work for your business use case, and it just creates a bunch of extra work when you didn't really need to do that. I'm actually working with, I think, a couple of companies right now where that's the case, and we're kind of fixing everything and like re-engineering everything because the first developer I work with wasn't really a Shopify person. So you can do that, go for it, but kind of at your own risk. I would consider that like a complete no-go. I would just not work with anybody that has no Shopify experience or can't really prove to me. Again, this kind of goes back to the questions as well. maybe I can send you some examples, but I've had people send me examples that they didn't work on. It's crazy. I mean, the kind of stuff that we go through as a company here. So again, I know a lot about this because we hire developers, right, as an agency, and we make sure they actually have Shopify experience. And so I'm kind of giving you the little bit of a scoop, right, as far as like what we've experienced and what our clients have experienced, that like these are things to look out for. Don't just take their words at face value. You want to kind of vet it out. The last red flag that I want to mention is the process and communication question. If you ask them, how do you like to work? And they just say like, however you like to work, what do you prefer? Do you want to do email? Do you want to do Slack? Do you want to do phone calls? And they just say like, yeah, whatever you want. That could be a red flag in the sense that like they're just saying, again, they're back to just saying yes because they want the job and they want the project, but they're not really being truthful with you. And eventually, so has been my experience with these sorts of things. In the beginning, it'll work, right? But then eventually, after I like to say like a 3 or 4 week period, all of a sudden we notice this humongous shift and like the true colors come out, and now that person's operating differently. They don't want to do phone calls, and it's like, wait, I thought I was working with this person, but really they were just putting on a bit of a show for me so they could land the project, and then they kind of revert back to like their default settings or how they like to operate, right? So that's the other thing just to keep in mind. A lot of the yeses and sure, no problem at all, that's what we have to watch out for in general. But just to recap, I just want to go through these things really quick. So know what you need. Know like the timeline that you have at hand and how like critical or urgent it is to the business. You want to make sure that you're matching up the developer and who you're hiring with like what level of expertise you think that's required. Because that basically will determine like, can it be onshore? Can it be offshore? Can it be a senior dev? Can it be a freelancer, an agency? While also keeping in mind that like, hey, I have these future visions for where my business is going. I want to make sure that I can get there, and thinking, okay, I need this right now, but where am I going kind of deal, right? Making sure that we understand what we need, the timeline and the budget that we want to get it done in, but ultimately where am I actually going, right? And I think just being realistic on budget, like we have this conversation a lot. It's like someone might approach us and say, hey, like I need all of this and I want to spend X number of dollars. And it's like, well, great, but like, where did you get that number from? Oh yeah, someone else told me we could do it. Okay, how many people did you talk to? Okay, what level of expertise do they have? Right, a lot of these like sort of like, that's why I said the budget should be kind of determined by your external sources versus like what you think or what a business owner would think, or a Shopify store owner in this example. Just considering all these different factors, I know it's a lot to like kind of figure it out, but ultimately, you know, if you want to go back, or you can reach out to us and say, hey, can you clear that up for me? We'd be happy to do that for you. I would happy to be answer it to you, because I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do as a company is basically protect people. We have a lot of companies that come to us and say, hey, like the last developer XYZ, and it's like, oh, that pains us. Gosh, we wish we would have been able to catch or talk to you beforehand to kind of save you from that experience. That's also what we're doing internally as a company. It's like, we want to make sure we have the right developers, the designers, and that the service that's being offered is at a very high level. And so, you know, our job, our mission as a company is really just to protect people, protect companies, protect business owners, protect Shopify store owners from having all these bad experiences, and really trying to like save them from that, save them from all those headaches that can happen when you're just working with a freelancer that you don't really know. Sure, other people have said they're great, but it's really hard to determine that right off of some reviews on like a website, like a freelancing website. So anyway, ultimately, if you like this video, we also talk about, there's a couple other videos you can watch that we posted recently. One is like complications, or like how complicated certain projects are. So if you don't really know how complicated a project is, you can check that video out, and that can kind of help you. Do I need a junior or senior dev? And the other one are just lessons learned. These are just things that you should probably know about when walking into a Shopify project. It's like, these are all the nitty-gritty details that no one likes to talk about, but we do. You can check that video out over here. Thank you so much. This is Luke Tull signing out. Hope y'all have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're at in the world. Thanks again. Bye-bye now.